Welcome, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to our recap of the Lord of the Mysteries Manhwa series. We're diving into the journey of our protagonist, Klein Moretti, as he navigates his new life after being reborn in an alternate Victorian-era world. Our story kicks off with Joe Mingrui suffering from an excruciating headache, so intense he fears it might be a brain hemorrhage. When he opens his eyes, his vision is blurry, and he wonders if he'll need a sick day from work. But as he takes in his surroundings, panic sets in. He's in a strange Victorian-era room with unfamiliar furniture and a mysterious crimson moon shining through the window. Turning to a mirror, he's stunned to see the reflection of a different man. Is this really me? He wonders aloud, trying to make sense of what's happening. His first thought is transmigration. He's read plenty of novels where the protagonist is transported to another world, but he quickly dismisses it as an overactive imagination. As he calms down and collects his thoughts, he remembers feeling unusually unlucky. He recalls buying some disappointing books from a street vendor and performing a luck enhancement ritual from one of those books. He followed the ritual's instructions to the letter, placing staple foods in all four corners of the room and reciting specific lines. Suddenly, the headache returns, more intense than before, flooding his mind with foreign memories. Maybe these are the memories of the person I've transmigrated into, he speculates. The name Klein Moretti comes to him. This is the original owner of the body he's now inhabiting. Klein Moretti was a citizen of the northern continent's Lone Kingdom, hailing from Tingen in Awa County. His father died in the Imperial Army during a colonial conflict, and the pension allowed Klein to enroll in school. His mother, a devotee of the Evernight goddess, passed away the same year he started at Koi University. Klein now lives with his older brother Benson, who supports the family as a clerk, and his younger sister Melissa. A history graduate, Klein is well-versed in the Fasak language, the ancestor of many others, and the Hermes language, tied to prayer and rituals. As Klein processes this information, he notices an open notebook on the desk. Scrawled inside are the words, "Everyone will die, including me." Shocked, Klein wonders what the original Klein meant. Then he sees blood on his hands and feels a sudden sharp pain in his head. Looking in the mirror, he's horrified to see a bullet wound on the side of his head. Klein was engulfed by a whirlwind of emotions, bewilderment, fear, and an intense sense of terror. How could one possibly survive such grievous injuries? How could this be? He pondered, his thoughts a tumultuous storm. As he scrutinized the bullet wound, he observed that it was already partially healed. This discovery intrigued him further. Could this miraculous healing be a consequence of the transmigration process? He wondered aloud. But then, did this imply that the Klein prior to the transmission had perished? How had he met his end? And why? His mind teemed with questions, each more perplexing than the last. His eyes swept across the room and fell upon a revolver resting on the desk where he had awoken. Counting the bullets, he noted one was missing. On the floor lay a spent bullet casing and blood stains. While it was evident he had succumbed to a gunshot, the question remained, was it murder or suicide? The notion of suicide flitted through his mind. Their poverty was such that his elder brother Benson had to go to great lengths just to buy gas for the desk lamp. But if Klein had indeed taken his own life, where had he procured the funds for a revolver? Conversely, if it was murder, what was the assailant's motive? Could a poor, lowly graduate truly incite such deadly enmity? His fragmented memories, scattered shards that refused to coalesce, rendered the mystery unfathomable. He deemed it an impossible puzzle to solve at that moment. Determined not to alarm his siblings, he resolved to cleanse the bloodstains from the floor. He seized the revolver, contemplating a suitable hiding place, when a sudden creak at the door made him start. He swiftly concealed the revolver from his sister Melissa's view. Melissa inquired about his actions. Quick-witted, Klein produced a watch and claimed he was winding their late father's timepiece, all the while discreetly stowing the revolver in a desk drawer. Melissa Moretti, a prodigious 16-year-old student at Tingen Technical School's Steam and Machinery department, aspired to become a steam mechanic. She offered to repair the watch, and Klein, feigning nonchalance, handed it over. After deftly fixing the watch, Melissa prepared a meal for Klein. She reminded him to purchase fresh bread, meat, and peas, and she mentioned his forthcoming interview. To celebrate, she promised to make lamb and pea stew. As she departed, Klein's mind churned with thoughts. Could he perform the luck enhancement ritual again after procuring the staple foods? Might it be possible to transmigrate back to his original body through the ritual? The questions lingered, gnawing at him, as he contemplated his next steps. Klein returned to his room, hiding the revolver securely beneath his bed. He then ventured into the bustling marketplace, which teemed with chatter, life, and fervent negotiations. As he took out his money, Klein mused aloud, "It doesn't matter what world you're in, money will always be incredibly precious." With a touch of humor, he laughed at his own observation. With renewed enthusiasm, Klein approached a stall to purchase staple foods, his mind set on performing the luck enhancement ritual to return to his own world. As he reached the stall, the owner greeted him by name and inquired if Benson had returned from work yet. This familiarity suggested the stall owner was an acquaintance of the former Klein. She continued, praising Benson's hard work and predicting that he would soon find a good wife. She also encouraged Klein, reminding him that as a new graduate, he should find an apartment with his own washroom. Klein nodded, aware that he couldn't attend the interview due to his fractured memory. Yet he held on to the hope that the luck enhancement ritual might allow him to transmigrate back to his world, where his wonderful life and friends awaited. After gathering his purchases, the stall owner announced the total: 9 pence. Klein was taken aback, recalling that the same amount of food had cost 11 pence just days ago. The owner explained that the price drop was due to the repeal of the Grain Act, which had been driven by public protests and had significantly reduced the cost of living. Thanking the stall owner, Klein made his way home. Along the way, he noticed a circus setting up for a show the next day. A clown handed him a flyer, and Klein thought that his sister Melissa would surely enjoy the performance. As he passed the circus tents, a voice called out, offering to tell his fortune. Klein turned to see a girl who tried to persuade him by touting the accuracy of her tarot divination. Intrigued, Klein noted that the word tarot was pronounced almost identically to its counterpart on Earth. He recalled that in this world, tarot cards did not originate from the 7 Orthodox gods, nor from ancient times. Instead, they were created about 170 years ago by Roselle Gustav, the former emperor of the Intis Republic. Roselle had also invented the steam engine, improved the sailboat, and overthrown the Intis kingdom, earning the recognition of the god of craftsmanship. Later, he was titled consul of the Republic of Intis. Roselle waged wars that turned many nations into protectorates of the Intis Republic, forcing even the Loan Kingdom and the Faisac Empire to bow to him. He transformed the Intis Republic into an empire and declared himself Emperor Caesar. Klein remembered that during Roselle's reign, the Church of the God of Craftsmanship received its first public divine revelation since the 5th epoch, prompting the god's renaming to the god of steam and machinery. Roselle then invented tarot divination and established the modern system of tarot cards. Klein recognized many of the tarot games from Earth, such as War Tarot, Texas Hold'em Tarot, and Gwent Tarot. Unfortunately, history recorded that Roselle was betrayed in his later years. In the year 1198 of the 5th epoch, the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun, along with the Sauron family and other noble families from the former Intis kingdom, assassinated him. Roselle perished in the White Maple Palace. Reflecting on these memories, Klein speculated that Emperor Roselle might have been a fellow transmigrant from Earth. This thought resonated deeply with him. Turning to the girl, Klein agreed to a tarot reading if the price was reasonable. She smiled and assured him it was free since he was her first customer. Inside the tent, she produced the tarot cards, and Klein noted that their design closely resembled those on Earth, reinforcing his theory about Roselle. The girl handed Klein the tarot cards, instructing him to shuffle and cut the deck. Ever cautious, Klein double-checked that the reading was indeed free, eliciting a laugh. Once the cards were laid out, the girl asked Klein what he wished to know: the past, the present, or the future. The past, present, and future? Klein asked, his curiosity piqued. The girl told him to shuffle the cards again, assuring him that they would provide the answers he sought. After shuffling, the girl picked the cards and explained that one would represent the past, the next would symbolize the present, and the third would herald the future. She then inquired which he wanted to look at first. "I will look at the present," Klein decided. The girl revealed the card. The Fool. It was the tarot card numbered 0, symbolizing the beginning of something new. Klein vividly remembered that it represented a start that could branch out into endless possibilities. The girl was surprised by the card, but before she could speak, an older girl abruptly entered the tent and called out the girl sitting by Klein, demanding to know why she was impersonating her again. The younger girl began to sweat, and the older girl ordered her to leave and return to where she belonged, reminding her that she was an animal trainer, not a fortune teller. The younger girl hurriedly exited the tent, and the real fortune teller asked Klein if he wanted her to interpret the cards for him. "Will it be free?" Klein asked. The fortune teller chuckled. "No, it is not free." Klein then walked out of the tent, incredulous that he had almost received a tarot reading from an animal trainer. Back at home, Klein translated the ritual's incantations into the ancient Fesak language, which he was more proficient in than the Hermes language he found too difficult. He placed staple food on the 4 corners of the room and started reciting the incantations for the luck enhancement ritual, hoping it would return him to his own world. "Blessings stem from the immortal Lord of heaven and earth," Klein began to recite. "Blessings stem from the sky Lord of heaven and earth." He repeated the incantations and then opened his eyes, hoping he had returned to his home world. But with his eyes open, he realized he was still not home. He wondered if he had done something wrong. Suddenly, pain surged through his head, as if needles were piercing his brain. The pain was so unbearable that he could barely keep his eyes open, and he heard someone talking next to him, murmurs from a distance. He fell to his knees, feeling like his head was about to explode. Then he plummeted into the abyss. After some time, Klein forced his eyes open. He found himself in a different realm, filled with a boundless yet endless gray fog. The gray fog was beneath him, around him, and he could see spherical red lights. He stood up and started walking. He tried to touch the red floating spherical lights, and they burst, zapping him back to his senses. While trying to get away, he lost his footing and touched more of them, and they also burst gracefully with light. In the Lowen Kingdom's capital, inside a villa, Audrey Hall stood in front of a mirror at her dresser. She tried many incantations, such as, "Mirror, mirror, I command you to awaken." But all was null and void. Nothing happened. Frustrated, she murmured that her father had lied to her. Her father, who seemed to be of noble blood, had told her that the mirror was once owned by the Dark Emperor of the ancient Solomon Empire, and that it was an extraordinary treasure. As her voice faded, she turned to the mirror, which started glowing with a crimson light that covered her whole body. In the sea, a sailboat battled the waves, and on the deck stood Alger Wilson. In his hand was a glass relic, which he observed as he sighed and said they were still short on ghost shark blood. No sooner had he finished his sentence than he noticed the glass relic glowing with crimson lights, and he too was covered by it. In the boundless, endless fog, Klein still felt the after effects of enlightenment from touching the crimson glowing spheres. Looking up, Klein saw 2 other figures in the midst of the fog. The 2 figures began speaking, addressing Klein. They asked him about the place above the gray fog and what he was trying to achieve by summoning them there. The 2 were speaking the Lowen language, which Klein took notice of. He didn't know what this place was and didn't have answers to their questions. But he deduced that they, too, were there as a result of his luck enhancement ritual and the spherical crimson lights above the gray fog. Klein saw this as an opportunity to gather information about this world. By the difference in accents, he knew they came from different parts of the kingdom. Klein decided to act the part. "It was an attempt," Klein said in a dignified and esteemed voice. "An attempt?" The 2 figures, Audrey and Alger Wilson, repeated out loud. Who was the mysterious figure above the gray fog? Who was the person next to them? Both Audrey and Alger asked themselves. They couldn't see Klein at all. All they saw was a figure of a man covered in gray fog. They also couldn't see each other, even though they were next to one another. Audrey then stepped forward, courage in her voice, and asked Klein if his attempt was complete and if she was allowed to go back home. Klein deduced that he was the host and the two were the guests. He then replied to Audrey, assuring her that if it was a formal request, he could send her back in an instant. Audrey felt reassured and acknowledged Klein as a gentleman, harboring no ill intentions. She then burst out with words, expressing how she had always wanted such an experience, filled with mystery, and that she aspired to become a beyonder. She then plainly asked Klein how she could become a beyonder. But Klein was also in the dark, and it was the first time he had heard of beyonders. Klein then wondered if it was too unbecoming of him, the host, to just stand and answer them. In his mind, he envisioned a temple, a long table, and himself sitting at the head of the table, observing his guests while they sat by the side asking their questions. No sooner had he finished envisioning the temple than the ground started shaking, unearthed itself, and huge pillars started sprouting from the ground. Audrey and Alger were terrified and in awe of Klein. They both asked in unison what on earth was happening. After the ground stopped shaking, Klein's two guests were left gasping as Klein walked majestically to the head of the table and sat there while staying in character. He was also flabbergasted and in the dark about what had happened. He knew he had envisioned the temple, but wondered where every detail and design came from, as his imagination was not as vivid as the designs. He asked the two to be seated. Audrey kick-started the conversation, admiring the miraculous temple, and Klein agreed in a dignified way. Alger then took up the conversation. He asked Audrey if she was from the Lowen Kingdom. He proceeded to tell her that if she wished to become a beyonder, she should join the Church of the Evernight Goddess, the Church of the Lord of Storms, or the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery. He also informed her that not all who join these churches become beyonders. He also informs her that there are other beyonders within courts and execution agencies that fight against the many dangers lurking in the dark. He concludes by saying that there are fewer beyonders today than there were during the early days of the Iron Age. This remark piques Klein's interest, and he recalls that the Iron Age refers to the current epoch. Audrey then addresses Alger, telling him that she already knows of the other beyonders. She knows about the Nighthawks, the mandated Punishers, and the machinery hive mind. She states that she doesn't want to lose her freedom. Alger bursts out, asking her if she knows anyone who became a beyonder without paying a price. Alger continues, saying that if she won't join the churches, then her only option is to try her luck and search for evil organizations that hide in the shadows. Audrey is disappointed and asks if there is any other way. Klein shows interest, and Alger notices his attention to their conversation. Alger then says that he has access to the recipe of 2 Sequence 9 potions. Audrey eagerly asks which 2 he has. Klein is puzzled, as this is the first time he has heard of sequences. Alger continues, explaining to Audrey that if she wishes to become a true beyonder, she must rely on potions. He explains that the names of the potions and their recipes are recorded in the blasphemy slate. He adds that the names of potions change over time and are always modified to match the current era, and that the names always portray the core characteristics of the potions. He gives an example of one of the potions he has access to. The Sailor, which grants the ability to walk on water, bestows illusory scales that allow incredible swimming speed and ease, and enables breathing underwater for up to 10 minutes at a time. Audrey interjects, asking if it is the one known as the Keeper of the Seas from the Lord of Storms. Alger confirms, saying it is now called Sailor, and that it was known as Keeper of the Seas in ancient times. Alger also mentions the second potion in his possession, Spectator. He informs Audrey that it grants the user heightened mental energy and observational skills. It also allows the owner to glimpse others' inner thoughts as if watching a play. He concludes by saying that she won't be able to act on anything, as she will only be a spectator. Audrey is intrigued and takes a liking to the Spectator potion. She asks how she can obtain the recipe for the Spectator potion. She also asks Alger if he is willing to trade for it, and in the spur of the moment, Alger asks for ghost shark blood. Audrey inquires how she can be sure that once she gets him the ghost shark blood, he will indeed give her the formula for Spectator. Alger tells Audrey that he will give her an address and will send the formula, or he can tell her the formula directly in this place. Then he faces Klein and asks for permission, calling upon him to witness their transaction. As Klein considers, Audrey asks for Klein's name and what they should call him. Klein answers, "You can call me the fool."
In the waves of steam and machinery, who could achieve extraordinary? In the fogs of history and darkness, who was
whispering. I woke up from the realm of mysteries and opened my eyes to the world. Firearms, cannons, battleships, airships, and difference machines. Potions, divination, curses, hanged man, and sealed artifacts. The lights shone brightly, yet the secrets of the world were never far away. This was a legend of the fool. Remember one sentence. The awakening of the world spells the fool's return. You can address me as the fool.